Hello and welcome to this edition of Reporters here on France24, the programme that showcases some of the best in-depth stories from correspondents around the world. Today we bring you a closer look at a special rehabilitation centre in Riyadh. Special because it is for reformed or convicted jihadist fighters, many returning from Guantanamo Bay. Saudi Arabia, a wealthy and influential US ally, has seen roughly 130 citizens being held in the controversial detention centre. More than 100 have now been released, repatriated into a programme much like a drug detox centre. Its mission, to re-educate and reintegrate them back into Saudi society. This government-funded initiative designed to erase their past and put them back on the right track. France24's Alaa, al-Hathloul and Johan Bodin travelled to the rehabilitation centre to follow their progress.
Shahad can't stop smiling. This morning, her mother has told her she won't be going to school and her aunt braided her hair nicely for this special day. She is finally going to see her father again, a father of whom she has no memory. Not far away, there's also this boy who looks a little lost, surrounded by his uncles.
Here is Osama, the son of Mohammed Atik al-Ufi, who was in Guantanamo. But he does not know him. We told him that he is away travelling. He's only seen a picture of him. We told him, this is your father.
In the lobby of this big hotel in Riyadh, women wait separately in anxious silence. Men are working their phones announcing the good news. Last night, a group of 14 Saudi detainees arrived discreetly, straight from the American military base of Guantanamo. Most of them were detained there for 6 years.
It's the worst camp the history has ever seen. There's never been such flagrant violations as those committed by the American army during their so-called war on terrorism. But the war is not against terrorism, it's against Islam.
This reaction does not match the official message of the Saudi government. Once the families from all over the kingdom have arrived, they are invited to get on a bus which takes them to a southern suburb of the capital. We follow them discreetly and finally arrive at the prison of al-Hathloul, but we are forbidden to enter. It's here that the detainees are to spend the next few months. Their families will only get to see them for a couple of hours.
The meeting was very emotional. However, at the beginning, we hesitated before welcoming him back. He was completely changed. When he left, he weighed over 90 kilos. And when we saw him today, he weighed about 50 kilos.
I noticed that he was not in good shape. They were all tortured. I'm very upset for my son.
He told us a little bit about the conditions of his detention, but he seemed reluctant to tell us more about it.
These detainees may have made it back from Guantanamo, but they're still not free. After months spent in the al-Hathloul prison, they still have to prove that they are able to fit back into Saudi society. For that, they need to go first to some kind of rehabilitation centre. We decide to go there. At the edge of the desert, we come across this high-security neighbourhood. We are greeted by officials. We will be followed constantly throughout our time spent here. A photographer and a cameraman have been asked to record every second of our visit. The army is in charge of supervising this centre, supposed to be a place where former Guantanamo prisoners can rest. Dressed in civilian clothes, soldiers are never far.
As you can see, we're not in a prison here. We'll show you around so you can see what they do and the activities we offer them.
Juma al-Dosri has a troubled past, more so maybe than any other of the detainees. He has travelled a lot. He received a military training from the Afghan Mujahideens, was then seen in Bosnia and later in the United States. The Americans believe he was there as a recruiter. He is now careful with the words he uses. Regarding his stay in Kabul in 2001, he says he was an aid worker there.
I'm innocent. Most of the people detained in Guantanamo have nothing to do with terrorist organizations. They haven't taken part in terrorist operations. They have no links with al-Qaeda.
Before returning to Saudi Arabia, he said he had been tortured in Guantanamo. Now, he'd rather not talk about it.
I'd prefer not to answer that question. No, really. I'll keep it to myself.
After a quick glance at the officers around him, the conversation is over. Saudi Arabia wants to maintain good relations with its American ally. Members of the security services and detainees eat together. They are always in a group. We weren't able to speak to them one-on-one.
We all live together, and the aim is to make them feel at ease with us, that we all understand each other.
Sheikh Gilan is in charge of putting them back on the right path. He recommends that we go talk to one of his protégés, a jihad veteran who was a mujahideen 25 years ago. According to the Americans, he was a brother-in-arms of Osama bin Laden, but he says that in 2001 he was in Afghanistan for business reasons.
I told you just to buy some carpets.
Carpets?
Yeah. That's all. Today I am a newborn. I can say to myself newborn, a new baby born today. Because I have seen all this today is new life for me. So beautiful. So fantastic.
If he is a reborn man, it's thanks to this rather particular rehabilitation program. The authorities have planned several activities for the detainees. One of them is a psychology class. The men are supposed to express themselves through art.
All right. I have given you crayons and paper. Now draw a house.
This is a dramatic departure from their life fighting for the Taliban regime. Then, they were told they were already in heaven and banned from depicting human beings. The detainees also follow a class on religion, and it might well be the core part of the program. The Saudi authorities aim to transform these Alaa fighters into model citizens.
We are going to study under which conditions jihad can be undertaken. The prerequisite is to have the approval of the state. You also need authorization from your parents. And another very important point is you have to respect and go by international treaties. Saudi Arabia had no agreement with the Soviet Union, and that explains why we intervened when the Afghanis asked us to help them.
Jihad fighters have to obey certain rules. They can't choose who they decide to fight. Only the Saudi regime is entitled to say who's a legitimate target in a jihad.
Allahu Akbar.
When the night falls, classes are over and it's time to relax. Abdel Hakim Bukhari is fully enjoying his stay. He invites us to visit his room and talks of memories of the past.
Where is your bed? Here, my beautiful bedroom. It's my friends here. We are 5 persons here. We were in a small cells. Each one in one cell. Very, very narrow, very bad.
Without seeing the light? The natural light?
No, it is a light, very bad, very strong. But excuse me, don't ask more. Thank you. I told you.
You don't want to speak about...
No, please. I don't want to talk about the past. Only for the future that I'm thinking from when I get the Saudi airplane. From that time, I forget.
Now, they're back in their homeland and they're supposed to forget all about their past. Somewhere else in the camp, a football game is going on. The Guantanamo team in yellow is winning easily against the team of guards. Michel Al-Harbi, aged 26, was shot in the hand while he was in Afghanistan. He lost his finger and can barely walk.
I've been paralyzed since my time in the camp in Cuba.
Did the American soldiers beat you up?
I don't know if they hit me or... I mean, I don't remember. I don't. What happened was supposed to happen. It's fate, and a devout man accepts his fate.
His memory is selective, probably due to the psychological trauma he suffered. Michal al-Harbi will now face severe difficulties in finding a job, a place in society. So far, a wife has been found for him. It's a good start. The US says he tried to commit suicide while he was detained in Guantanamo. It would explain his physical condition. His family, who's very religious, refuses to believe it. 110 Saudis have already departed the Guantanamo Bay detention facility. The Saudis outnumber all other nationalities. Mohammed al-Fawzan doesn't look like the typical Alaa fighter, but like others, he spent time in the center. He accepted and lived by the rules imposed. The authorities have taken good care of him.
This car is a gift from Prince Mohammed bin Nayef. This is the ministry where I used to work, and where I am working again today. I was away from work for 3 months. I got fired, and then I stopped for 3 years. When I was released from jail, the prince ordered that I get my old job back. I was like any other young person. I wanted to participate in the liberation of Iraq. I wanted to serve my religion, my country, and my region. I wanted to fight the American army and enter the ranks of the Islamic army in Iraq.
His attempt to join the Iraqi insurgents failed. Mohammed was arrested. He was sent for a short time to the center. Tonight, he's expecting guests. He's invited his new mentor, Sheikh Jilan.
Those who strayed from the right path are looking for people like Mohammed. Why? Because they want a young person who hasn't got too much religious experience. Enthusiastic youth in their 20s. Those are the real victims.
Despite the gifts, this is not just a courtesy visit. The former jihadist will be forever closely monitored. We are back in the center. These are jihadists who fought in Iraq. Sheikh Jilan has a lot of work in front of him, defining what is a good jihad.
These people are the assets of our country. When someone asks me what shares I earn, I answer that these are my most valuable market shares. If someone tells me he wants to go to jihad, I will say, okay, go ahead. But before, make sure your jihad is right. If it is, I'll say go for it. But if you don't respect the conditions, I will say don't do it. You, Mohammed, you are among those who did jihad in Iraq, and they took advantage of you there. Did you ask for authorization from the state before you left?
No, out of ignorance. There they wanted me to get into a car full of explosives. I refused. I went there to fight, not to commit suicide.
According to the US Army, half of the suicide bombers in Iraq are Saudis. The center's psychologist highlights with the detainees the importance of positive thinking.
We highlight life goals. We tell them how to avoid thinking of death and consider heaven instead. We tell them life is great.
The center's psychologist still has a lot of traumatizing memories to erase. This rehabilitation center will surely be open for many more years. According to the American Army, half of the foreign insurgents in Iraq are Saudi nationals.
Well, I'm now joined in the studio here by Alaa al-Hathloul, one of the reporters behind this piece. Alaa, this centre is in Riyadh, and presumably a question mark remains over the guilt of some of these people being treated. So how do Saudis feel about it?
Yes, there is a question mark from the American side. The U.S. Army declared that of all people released from Guantanamo, there are 30 who went back to terrorist activities. But on the other side, Saudi think that this program is successful till now. But we have to remember that this rehabilitation center, it's only 1 year old, so the time will tell in the long term.
Now, of that 30, of course, they're not all Saudi nationals.
Not all, no. The American army, they didn't say from where they come from.
Now, of course, as we saw in your report, these aren't all ex-Guantanamo Bay detainees. Some of them are jihadist fighters or would-be jihadist fighters from Iraq.
Yeah, this center is not only for people who went back from Guantanamo, but also for those people who came back from Iraq or even tried to go back to go to Iraq. And in Saudi Arabia, they are considered as the dangerous people since they think they are be able to do terrorist activities in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. And how, out of interest, how difficult was it for you to film this piece in Saudi Arabia?
It wasn't that easy. It took me time to get the permission in order to go inside this center, but I think it's normal because this rehabilitation program, it's only 1 year, so it's something new for Saudis.
Okay, Alaa al-Hathloul, thank you very much. That wraps up this edition of Reporters here on France 24. Do join us again same time next week for another edition of Reporters. Thank you for watching.